I know! Isn't it cool? You can make this thing fly. I guess so. I just thought that I could do the same with air as with water. You know, as far as how fast to go? I'm just keeping us a couple of feet above the water, just in case. In case of what? Sonic boom, wipeout, Loch Ness monster, whatever. I just figure I'll use the water as a safety net. That's a good idea. Midas and Darkspeed started buzzing by the girls. They had to stop whenever other boats came near. Closer to shore, they noticed Greco and Newton learning to use Newton's flying ability to push their boat. Darkspeed looked back for Saber. Saber had barely brought his boat out from the water when he just stopped rowing. Darkspeed told Midas to go by Saber to see if he was all right. Is anything wrong? Darkspeed asked Saber. No, everything is right. What do you mean? My teammates have fought constantly. This is the first peaceful thing I've seen since coming to Alpha, Saber said, pointing out to the ocean view. So, go have fun and let me enjoy the peace. You're a weird guy, Saber. Midas, let's go. Saber watched the others play on the water. He thought of his home and the view of the Persian Gulf from his balcony. Moments like this made being away from his home easier, and he wanted to enjoy them. Hours seemed to go by before they heard the bullhorn that was Olympian. Reluctantly, they made their way back to shore. Olympian and Inferno were doing something at the beach. Mrs. Zavaleta was nowhere to be seen. Midas and Darkspeed made it back first to see what they were called for. What's up? Darkspeed said. Was that thing flying? Olympian asked. Sure was, thanks to Midas' flying carpet service. Now, what's up? Food of the gods, Olympian said as he pointed to an indent in the sand. What? Clam bake. It used to be done by burying fresh clams shallow under a big fire on the sand. I got the fresh clams and Inferno was the big fire. Where's Mrs. Zavaleta? She's up getting some stuff for the clams. She could probably use some help. Olympian motioned to Darkspeed and he was gone. Midas, we could use a nice fire pit and something to sit on all around. Sure, just give me a second, Midas answered as he looked for a good spot. Soon the other alphas were putting boats away and gathering wood for the fire pit. Darkspeed blinked into the area with his arms full of kitchen things. Midas, table, Darkspeed said, and Midas made one. Darkspeed blinked back and forth a few more times, placing everything on the table. Mr. and Mrs. Zavaleta came down the path as Olympian was digging out the steaming clams with his hands. Doesn't that hurt? Mrs. Zavaleta said. No, Mrs. Zavaleta, I'm pretty much invulnerable. Helps when doing outdoor cooking, Olympian said as he handed the first tray of baked clams off to Inferno, who placed them on the table. Everyone, stand back a touch, Inferno said. Once they were back, he ignited the wood in the fire pit with a stream of fire from his hand. Mr. Zavaleta poured everyone a large glass of some kind of juice. Mrs. Zavaleta took charge with plates and condiments. Wet and dry alphas alike surrounded the fire and started in on the specialty prepared for them. Where are Bioforce and Virtuoso? Olympian asked. They're still sleeping. I put blankets over them and they never moved, Mrs. Zavaleta said. They've been asleep over 4 hours. They must have been tired, Inferno said. Well, we'll just have to save some for them, Olympian said. What time is it? Midas asked. It was just about 8 o'clock when we came down, Mr. Zavaleta said. 2000 local time and 0000 back at Alpha, Darkspeed said. Midas nodded and went back to his food. The group seemed content around the fire with the sun going down. The members of First Team were talking about the fun they had had on the water. The girls from 8th Team were getting in an argument over how to prepare the clams. The boys from 8th Team were trying to ignore what was about to wreck the mood on the beach. Must you quarrel? Now? Here? Over nothing? Saber asked as a plea for quiet. Oracle and Aid looked as though they had been scolded and stopped talking. Shroud looked at her leader in defiance. I didn't think we were talking to you. Just enjoy yourself without being argumentative. Is that so hard? Saber said. Why do you have to be so bossy? You're not my father or my coach. Even Olympian listens to Darkspeed, Saber said, pointing at Olympian. How is it so hard for you to listen to your leader and obey even the simplest command? How did I get drawn into this? Olympian said. Shush, Darkspeed said quickly. You were made leader, so that must make you right, Shroud said with sarcasm. Why don't you all try not to fight while you're here? Inferno said. I think that would be a great idea. My wife and I will see about some dessert. Mr. Zavaleta took his wife by the hand and up the trail. See? Now our host is offended, Saber said. Then it was because you butted into our conversation, Shroud said. I was telling you to stop bickering. No, you want to control me and have me obey you. I won't have it, Saber stood up and walked away from the fire. Darkspeed walked after him. Shroud continued to talk to those remaining at the fire. "Just ignore her. Come back and sit with us," Darkspeed said. Saber looked at Darkspeed, who knew he didn't understand his frustration. "There's an old joke. I don't know how to translate it cleanly in English, but it goes like this. An Arab and a Jew are arguing over why there are so many Arabs and so few Jews. The Arab says it's because they've been blessed by God and the Jews were not. The Jew says his people were persecuted because they are God's chosen people, and the Arabs are simply one of their many trials. Then the Arab's 4 wives come and tell him dinner is ready in his warm, inviting home. The Jew's wife comes and tells him not to forget to bring dinner home. She goes on to berate him for falling short in her eyes. The Arab then tells the Jew he knows why there are so few Jews. He tells him it has nothing to do with God, and everything to do with the shrew the Jew calls his wife." Saber said the shrew part louder. "I heard that," Shroud said after listening with her super hearing. "You were meant to," Saber yelled back. "That is enough," Inferno said as he stood. "One more word out of either of you, a single unkind word or a hint of sarcasm, and I cut this trip short for 8th Team. I'll have Virtuoso take you back to Alpha and your time off will be done. So get along or so help me, I will make you so miserable you'll wish you had." Saber and Shroud were quiet. They both knew from his tone that Inferno had passed whatever tolerance point he had for his team's behavior. Mr. and Mrs. Zavaleta brought down fresh fruit pieces, chocolate, caramel, marshmallows, shortbread cookies, and utensils. Mrs. Zavaleta asked Midas to make small copper pans with handles on the side, and Greco attached them to sticks. Soon, the Alphas were heating their desserts over a campfire and enjoying them. Bioforce and Virtuoso came down the path, both with blankets wrapped around their shoulders. "Sorry we slept so long," Virtuoso said. "But that hammock was so comfy," Bioforce added. "It's fine, you were tired. Your friends had a great time. I think they even saved you some clams," Mr. Zavaleta said as he retrieved some on a plate. "No thanks. I think I'll just go straight for dessert," Virtuoso said. Once everyone had their fill of everything offered, Darkspeed spoke up. "Tokyo is calling. We need to get going if we're to stick to our schedule." Midas cleaned up the beach as the others headed to the pool house to change their clothes. Bioforce walked up the path with Midas to give Virtuoso a chance to be alone with her parents. "Are you sure you're not overdoing it at Alpha?" Mrs. Zavaleta said. "I don't do as much physical stuff as the others. I just study so much. It kind of leaves me brain drained," Virtuoso said. "Jillian, you need to take care of yourself or you won't be any good to anyone at Alpha," Mr. Zavaleta said. "I know. I think I've been learning that lesson these last few weeks." "I have to say, I like the kids on your team," her father said. "Thanks, I'm glad you do. Especially that boy Olympian. He was so helpful. Getting and baking those clams, and so sweet while doing it," her mother said. Virtuoso froze and blinked at her mother. "Our Olympian? He's one of the most well-mannered young men I've ever met," her father said. "Our Olympian," Virtuoso said again. "He must be some kind of psycho or something." "No, not that," Mr. Zavaleta said. "I scanned him. He just wants to belong and fit in. Among adults, that's easy. Among his family, it's easy. Among his peers, well, he's just trying to carve out a space for himself. Remember that and work around it." "I hadn't thought of it that way before." "So, you think there may be a person under the raging jerk exterior? Mediterranean tan with those dark good-looking features, and built the way he is? You'd think," Mrs. Zavaleta tried to say. "No, he's not my type," Virtuoso cut her off. "Besides, we can't date people on the same team. I haven't even had time for a good bath, let alone thinking about anything else. Your mother is just having some fun at your expense. Your friends are just about ready to go," Mr. Zavaleta said. "Dad, you are a superhero. Do you know of a way to read someone's mind? Someone who has a really strong natural mental shield?" "Sure, it's an advanced technique. The easiest way to practice is to try and read them when they're asleep. Use your power softly, then slowly increase over 20 minutes or so. Think of your power as water that's leaking through a brick wall. If you push too hard and too fast, the person will feel a sharp pain in their head. That would explain a lot. Your mind-reading power is the strongest I've ever seen. If you push past someone's shield, it would be very painful. Think softly, like a breeze blowing in, not a bull breaking in."